Hey everyone, welcome back. Now I will talk to you about one of my key philosophies of nutrition regarding the idea of the guilty pleasure or the cheat meal. So this is just to help you steer yourself in the right direction to improving your nutrition for training. So today's topic is, should I feel guilty for faltering on my healthy eating plan, and what should I do if I mess up? So the term guilty pleasure is something that you enjoy very much, but that makes you feel guilty for having it because you know it's not great for you. But I say, never drive yourself to the place of feeling genuine shame or guilt for messing up on your nutrition plan. There is a key difference between acknowledging that you made a mistake with your nutrition versus harboring feelings of guilt over it. One mindset is constructive, the other is destructive. So if you fumble, take note of why you messed up and how you can improve that for next time. And move on. Do not linger in self-pity, do not feel guilty, do not feel ashamed of yourself or like this says something bad about your moral character. Make necessary changes. For example, if you ate cookies before dinner when you were not hungry, you can, in the future, push the cookie jar to the back of the shelf where you don't see it as easily. Out of sight, out of mind is one simple way to reduce temptation. Or if you have a habit of binging on a certain food regularly, just refrain from buying it in the first place and find an alternative. For example, ice cream is a very often abused binge food because it is delicious but not very filling. And it is sweet and it has a soft texture that lends itself very well to being eaten very quickly. Okay, and it doesn't take anything to prepare it either. You easily just scoop it out in a bowl or even directly from the container. So that's a mistake a lot of people make. So I myself have had enough ice cream binges to where I stopped buying ice cream to keep in my house altogether. Now I only have it at the ice cream store or special occasions. So that's just one example, because when there's a food that you're tempted to eat too much of at once, if you only buy ice cream at the ice cream shop, you have to wait in line, you have to think about which one to get, you have to pay for it by the scoop and pay each time you have it. So that really ties you into a certain quantity of it. Okay, no matter how much you want an extra bowl of ice cream, you know that to get it, you'll have to go through that whole process again, and then you'll have to pay for it again too. So it makes you have to kind of stop and think. Whereas if you have a whole quart of ice cream in your house, nothing necessarily is stopping you from just digging right in and spooning through the entire thing. So that's just one example, because ice cream is a very common binge food for a lot of people, but the same concept applies to any food that is a big area of temptation for you. Not having it in the house and only being able to get it at special occasions where you have to be tied to a certain quantity of it. So on that same note, I'm just going to give an example of how you can find an alternative using the ice cream example again. So one great alternative to ice cream is fruit. Particularly if you want like a cold frozen treat in the summer, fruits like bananas, mangoes, and grapes lend themselves very well to being frozen because they're not too hard when you freeze them up. Like biting into a frozen banana feels a lot like eating an ice cream bar. And for different kinds of fruits, you can also freeze them up and put them through a blender, so it creates a nice sorbet type texture, very similar to ice cream. But obviously it would be healthier because it's fruits, nutrition, lighter, and in addition to that, just the fact that you have to go through a process to make something, prevents you from mindlessly keep on eating the same thing over and over again. So packaged foods of all kinds are very prone to being abused as a binge food because it just takes nothing to get started on it. You just open the package and it's all ready to go. So to help avoid that whole situation, you can invest more in scratch ingredients, so you'll have to actually go through the process of preparing the food instead of just opening a container and going for it. That makes a really big difference. Anytime you put that kind of barrier, you will have to stop and think about the making of the food itself you have to schedule time to make it. So it really, cuts away that impulse to just go for something right away just because you feel like it. So further on that note, here is a big reason why you should not let yourself go to that guilt place. So I gave you some examples of how you can actually be constructive and avoid those kind of binge eating temptation situations. But here is why just the feelings of shame and guilt are not constructive for you to have at all. Some people think that it is good to feel like, oh, you should feel bad if you messed up. But no, and here's why. So shame and guilt is what makes you feel submissive to your cravings. The shame is what makes you feel powerless over the thing that you want. Like, for example, that box of brownies was so tempting. I just had to have all of them. Now I feel bloated and fat, and I feel ashamed of myself for messing up on my nutrition plan. If you feel like that says something bad about your moral character, whenever you drive your character into that, it can really derail your own self-confidence in the long run. You can think, because I messed up so badly today, now I'm less confident. I don't know if I can reach my goals because if I didn't have the self-control today, I don't know if I'll be able to hold on to this. So that is really what can ruin your long-term plans. That's really the difference between a fumble and completely throwing your whole plan away. So by digging into that feeling of guilt, you end up convincing yourself that that indulgence has a sort of power over you that you cannot conquer. Okay, so further than that, even beyond messing up on your diet plan, guilt is a major driver of addictions, eating disorders, and even abusive situations, because what all of those have in common is the pattern. There is something that you crave, it's a guilty pleasure, so you know it's not great for you, but you want it, a little bit of it. You have quick access to it. It gives you some feelings of instant gratification. Then you feel guilty for overdoing it. And that feeling of guilt, it just derails your confidence because you feel like you can't control your craving for this. So in the long run, if that continues as a pattern, whatever that thing is can really undermine your entire self-esteem and self-confidence and really make you feel like you can't control yourself in general. Okay, because how people feel about not being able to control their food intake, over time they end up transmitting that to other areas of my life. Like, because I can't control myself around food indulgences, now I think I can't control myself around reaching my career goals or relationship goals. So because food is something that we need to have every single day, your feelings towards food and your body can affect a lot of your life overall. So that's why I want to prevent from going into that shame and guilt place, and instead think in terms of being constructive in solving your problem. So whether or not you feel ashamed about messing up your nutrition plan, eating the wrong food, from the nutrition context, that can mean the difference between having an eating disorder, like, for example, bulimia, because you feel so ashamed of yourself for messing up your nutrition plan that you want to undo the results of that. You want to go back in time and undo it. Or, compulsive overeating, because you feel like you just can't control your cravings overall, so why even try? You have no power over it. Or anorexia, because if you feel like food is the enemy, you can't control yourself around food, you might as well just stop eating. So all of those have a lot to do with actually feeling ashamed of yourself for messing up on your nutrition plan. Now the same can apply to other indulgences like smoking, drinking, and other things like that. There are a ton of factors that go into things like eating disorders and compulsive or addictive behaviors. But, the feelings of shame and guilt are only one aspect of it, but they're a pretty important aspect among all the other things that can contribute to that. Overall, I'd say the fear of going out of control is what makes you go out of control. Because let's say you have anxiety, like, I really need to keep up my diet, but oh my god, brownies, ice cream, oh, they look so good. Or that burger, it just looks so good. The fear that you'll go out of control, well, that creates anxiety, and then that anxiety creates that desire to get rid of the anxiety by going for your indulgence. So, really, just that anxious, avoidant fear over things can actually be what drives you to do exactly the thing that you don't want to do. So instead, just think objectively about why you feel that way. Like if you find yourself constantly craving a bad food and overeating and doing too much of that, just really think objectively about why that is. Try to take your ego out of it. Just really be honest with yourself about why you're wanting this thing and what you can do to prevent yourself from overindulging into it. So for example, if you're really like, the second you have a bit of ice cream, you want to just keep on going for it, like, don't even buy it for your house. If you're in that aisle of the grocery store, just turn away from it. Instead, maybe just like me, I like to have ice cream, but only at special occasions, not in my house. Or if you have a pattern on just faltering on your nutrition plan a lot of the time, it's actually a very constructive thing to write it all out. Why you fumble on it, certain steps that you can take to prevent that, and even write it down, stick it on your fridge or your pantry shelf somewhere where you can see it, because that way, right when you're tempted to overdo it, you can look at your list. Okay, here is why I'm tempted to do that. Here are specific things that I can do to prevent it. So overall, being constructive about it instead of just digging into that shame and guilt place. Overall, we need to have a positive relationship with food because nutrition is life. Your approach to food, nutrition, and your body carries over into a lot of aspects in your life. So we really want that to be very constructive and not driven by anxiety, fear, or shame and guilt and all that negative stuff. Well, I hope you found this video very helpful and insightful. Do implement the steps that I told you here because everyone struggles to eat the right thing occasionally. The right diet for you, that's very individual. And I'm not here to tell you exactly what kind of meal plan to follow for that. If you really want a specific meal plan, find a registered dietitian, a professional nutritionist to help you out with that and communicate to them all your goals and why you have those goals and all of that. Well, yeah, this video is just about the mentality that you want towards food. So constructive and not destructive. Right? Well, if you enjoyed this video, do click that like and subscribe button. Clicking those buttons is a whole lot easier than resisting your brownie cravings. So go and click those, and I will see you next time.